I want to tell you a story. As a youth pastor, I probably got to go to Magic Mountain in California 10 times over the years. And there was this one year where we were at the gate, and we had separated the kids into groups of like 6 or 7, and I had one group I was leading. And we all talked, and we decided, let's pick a ride that we all want to go on and just run to that one so we'll beat the line. And so all the kids chose Goliath. And so when the gates opened, we took off running, bold running. I was knocking children over. And me and my group, we were just full sprinting to where we knew Goliath was. And we ran up and got in line. It was really short. We were about to get on the train. We're talking it up. And this kid, Walt Carlson, was next to me. And I said, Walt, what's your favorite roller coaster? And he goes, I've never been on a roller coaster before. And I was thinking, I kind of remember turning my head and going, he's never been on a roller coaster before. His first one's going to be Goliath. Goliath is 255 feet drop at the beginning. There's really, maybe there is I don't remember a loop-de-loop. Maybe I blacked out. But it's just this first drop that's just crazy. 255 feet, and it just feels like it's straight down. And when you hit the bottom, you're going 85 miles an hour. So I just thought, I'm not going to say anything. And we got on the cart, and he happens to sit right next to me, and it's that slow click, 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 going up and up and up and up, and you just keep going up and up and up. And finally, I remember, I'll never forget. Well, this was a lot of years ago, but Walt turned to me and goes, Mr. Brainerd, I don't think I can do this. And very lovingly, in a youth pastor way, I said, Walt, it doesn't matter what you think. You're doing it. And then we were like, woo! And afterwards, we got off, and Walt was like, that was awesome. What's next? Let's go. The thing is, Six Flags, it's not a Bible park, and yet it has this ride, Goliath. And today we come, as we've been journeying through 1 Samuel 17, to one of the most famous stories in the Bible, certainly. Everybody knows the story of David Goliath. If you've been in churches, you've probably heard sermons about David and Goliath. If you ever went to Sunday school in your life, you most likely had something about David and Goliath. And so I wanted to do things differently as we come to chapter 17. And obviously I'm talking a little earlier. And we're going to worship as we read through these 58 verses. I'm going to try not to preach too much other than read it, but I'll probably preach a little. Okay, so open up your Bibles to 1 Samuel 17. And if guys with Bibles could come forward, that'd be helpful. I'd love for it to be right in front of you as we go through it. Just wave at one of these guys as they come by. First Samuel 17. Okay, verse 1. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Soko in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes Dammim between Soko and Azekah. And Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. You can go to the valley of Elah today. I got a picture of it. So this valley right here, you can tell this is shooting from one side where the hills are, and on the other side there's hills, and there's this valley in between. One of the cool things about this valley is there's a creek that runs even today through the middle of it, which is kind of important because when David ends up going down into this valley, what does it say he does? He picks up 5 smooth stones along a creek, right? Not only that, there's a real cool archaeology going on right now. They found a couple towns in this area that have dated to 950 BC, which is perfect for the events that we're reading about. Verse 4, a champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. That's over 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. That's 125 pounds. On his leg, he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. So what we have so far is a big man with a lot of armor. I'm going to go over here real quick. Found 2 boulders, and I weighed them to be 15 pounds because it says that the tip of his spear was a 15-pound iron point. And so I weighed 15 pounds of rocks out and duct taped them to this hula hoe. Now, his was a bronze spear, but I was just thinking what it would be like for this guy. I mean, I couldn't throw this at you. But if there was a guy that could throw this at you and it hit you, you'd be in trouble. Not only that, it says he weighed he had 125 pounds of armor on him. Stephen, you coming up here? Stephen weighs 125 pounds. So Stephen, just jump on, buddy. Just do it. All right. So here's what, watch out. Here's what Goliath did. He's coming at you with 125 pounds of armor hanging from him, a 15-pound spear, and all this stuff. And so in other words, he's a big guy. This wouldn't work for me. If I came at you like this, you'd be like, oh, you're dead. All right, here we go. You're a good man. Give it up for Stephen. The point is, Goliath is big. Verse 8. Goliath stood, shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he's able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you'll become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistine said, This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Notice it points out that it's Saul and all the Israelites that are dismayed and terrified. What do we know about Saul's physical appearance from the other chapters? What does it say about him? He was a head taller than everybody else, right? Saul was a big guy, but he's dismayed and terrified. In fact, everybody is dismayed and terrified. And yet, you know where this story's going. You know there's a teenager on his way. He's going to end up going in there, and he's not going to be dismayed and terrified. So how? And why is this one guy not dismayed and terrified? I want to read you something up here on this board. Where others see an invincible man, David sees blasphemy against the armies of the living God. When others are freaking out, David sees a reason for immediate action. And where others see despair, David sees opportunity to serve God. In your notes, I have this blank. It says, in your life, when others see despair, when other people are freaking out, when it doesn't look good, you can see an opportunity to trust in God, to confidently trust in God. I don't know what's going on in your life. It could provide a dismay and terrified, but for us, it's an opportunity to serve God. Let's sing this together. Verse 12. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. And Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time he was very old. We met them last week, and we're being reintroduced to him here. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to war. The firstborn was Eliab, the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days the Philistine came forward, every morning and evening, and took a stand. Now Jesse said to his son David, "Take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers, and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are, and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines." You can see it's kind of more like a militia. They had to, provide for their own. It's not like the army is feeding them or anything. And so brothers had to bring food out to them. Verse 20. And early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of a shepherd, loaded up and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Yeah! I guess they're pumping themselves up. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines, facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, must have been a guy in the back, and ran to the battle lines, and he asked his brothers how they were. And as he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. David hears this nonsense. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. Now the Israelites had been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He keeps coming out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He'll also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel. David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? In other words, are you kidding me? How is this happening? I want to show you a picture. It's like a little test. I'm kind of messing everybody up today because, we're going back. Oh, there it is. Good job. Who can tell me? I said good job. That was a sign. Go back to the, I'm not going to give it away because it's a test. Who's that? All right, that's Dagon. A few chapters ago, remember when the Philistines, this army, when they took the Ark of the Covenant into their temple to Dagon, which is like a merman god, what they were saying is, the Hebrew God is inferior to our awesome Dagon. And every morning when they got there, right, Dagon had fallen over and bowed before the ark. And one time his head is taken off and his hands are sitting there, right? And then all the people in the city, you remember what happens to them? They get these bloody hemorrhoids. They start to die, lumps. And they realize, we are getting this Ark of the Covenant out of here. They had a fear of God. Apparently that has gone away. Because now this Philistine Goliath is out there and he's going, I defy the armies of the living God. And David's like, how is this possible? What's going on here? They should not be standing up blaspheming God. Verse 27. They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, this usually happens, when somebody's deciding, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to follow God. I'm going to honor God. It's usually sometimes people around them are like, begin to maybe question their integrity a little bit. And that's what happens. Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness, shepherd boy? I added that for a second. I know how conceited you are, how wicked your heart is. You've come down only to watch the battle. So just step aside and watch us do the work. Now, what have I done, said David. Can't I even speak? He then turned away to someone else, brought up the same matter. And the men answered him as before. And what David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David's actually thinking about going out. He's actually asking people, now what's going to happen? Saul hears about it and he calls David. He wants to hear if there's really somebody who's willing to go out against this guy. And for David, it's not about the money. It's not about the marriage to the king's daughter. It's not about the fact that his dad will never have to pay taxes anymore. For him, he's like, how can this guy defy our God? This isn't right. And for him, he's got a whole different motivation. His motivation is for the honor of God, and he completely trusts in God. He's willing to go out there. Even though it's scary, he's willing to do what is right. This is a quote from Rosa Parks, who is an African-American who refused to give up her seat on the bus. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. It was time for someone to stand up, or in my case, to sit down. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. And guys, if you know that what you have to do is right, it does away with fear. If God's calling you, he's blessed you financially, and you're a little worried about giving, you can know, hey, no, this is what's right. Maybe it's being baptized, We're going to have baptism soon. Maybe you're like, I don't really like to get up in front of people. But knowing what is right does away with fear. Maybe it's sharing Christ with somebody, but you know it's right, and at least take some of that fear away. Maybe it's receiving Christ as your Savior. You think people are going to make fun of you or something, but knowing that He's the only way and the only true and the only life does away with fear, and you come to Him. Let's worship again. Verse 32. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he's been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. And when a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him, a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic, and he tried walking around because he was not used to them. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul. "I'm not used to them." So he took them off, and he took a staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. I love this part. I love the fact that the armor didn't fit him. First of all, we know Saul was a big guy, and David is not a big guy, probably just due to his age. So the idea of him putting on armor and a helmet and going, this isn't going to work, is hilarious to think about. But I love, one of my favorite parts in here is where Saul says, you can't go against him. He's been training. He's like a machine, that Goliath. His whole life he's been training. He's a warrior. You can't go against him. And what does David answer? Well, I've been taking care of sheep. So, there. Right? I love that. Because then he goes on to explain what he means. Listen, here's how it went when I was taking care of the sheep. A bear came and grabbed one of my sheep by its mouth and ran off. So what did I do? I chased it. And I ripped the sheep out of its mouth, and then it turned on me. So I grabbed it by its hair, and I struck it, and I killed the bear. And then the same thing happened with a lion. What God has been showing me is that He's with me, and whether it be bear or lion or this Goliath fellow, he's going down. That's basically what he says. He cannot defy the armies of the living God. You know, last week when Greg got up after my sermon, he said, he said something really great. I don't remember what it was. He said, understand. This is what he said. He said, understand that God might have you where you are right now for a reason, though you might not like it. He might have you in the place He has you for a reason. David looked back on his shepherding years and goes, that was for a reason that I was a shepherd all this time. And wherever you are right now, it could be for a reason. We should be looking for that. Look at what it says about David in the Old Testament. There's a couple verses I want to show you. Look at how it describes him. One time, all the people of Israel sinned. Later on, when he's going to be king, all the people are sinned. Look what he says. I have sinned. I, the shepherd, have done wrong. These are but sheep. He's talking about people. What have they done? Let your hand fall on me and my family. When David is king, he's still acting like a shepherd, because that's how God raised him up. Later on, it says in Psalms, it says, and David shepherded them with integrity of heart, and with skillful hands he led them. Still, even as a king, David is described as a shepherd. Now, when I was sure I was going to be a pastor in college, the only door God opened up to be was a math teacher and a freshman girls basketball coach. But I look on that and I go, I spent the whole time as a math teacher telling people, you can do it. You got what it takes. You can do it. And as a freshman girls basketball coach, I would be like, no, we need your skills here on this team. Get in the game. Get out in the game and take a shot. Go for it, right? And I think as a pastor, more than the 15 plus and counting years of seminary that I've had, that God uses that more than anything else to say, oh, you guys could do it. You guys have what it takes. The Lord has walked you through this for a reason. Whatever he has you now, it's for a reason. And so get on the game. Get in the game. There's a reason why he's giving you these skills. We need you to go out there and shoot. Let's worship again. Forever reign. Verse 41. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was a little more than a boy. A lot of people believe that Goliath might have suffered from this gigantism, which is actual disease, kind of the Andre the Giant type problem, which usually comes along with really bad vision. And it's kind of interesting that the Goliath gets really close before he figures out that this is a boy. Glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." Okay, this next passage, 45 through 47, is just awesome. If you don't have it underlined, 45 through 47 in your Bibles, it should be. David said to the Philistines, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin. But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down, and I will cut off your head. And this very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And all those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." Yeah! That's what I would have been. All the world's going to know. You see, David was motivated by the honor of God. And God's going to get honor for himself. He's been blasphemed. He's been defied. But now God is about to get honor. And David says, and everybody's going to know that it's not by sword or javelin or spear, but it's by the Lord. It's the Lord's battle. I don't know if you're in a battle right now. My wife has been sick for 2 weeks. And sick and emotional stuff going on. And I love the fact that the battle is the Lord's. And He'll do it. You know, I love the fact we can trust in God. We can rest in God. And wherever you are, know that it's God's battle. It's not yours. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. And reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it. It was 2 ropes attached with a little patch of leather, and he slung it. And it struck the Philistine on the forehead, and the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. And David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. And without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. And David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword, drew it from the sheath, and he killed him. And he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. And the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Remember, there were 5 cities of the Philistines. Gath and Ekron is 2 of those. Their dead were strewn along the Sharim road to Gath and Ekron. Now, that might not sound like a celebration point. You know, that's the same thing that when the Red Sea collapsed on the Egyptians that were chasing Israel, and what did they do? We're going to sing. And they celebrated that God fought for them. And that's what they're going to do here. Verse 53. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. And David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem. And he put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. Later on, we're going to hear about Goliath's sword several years from now. They still had it. And as Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" And Abner replied, "As surely as you live, your majesty, I don't know." The king said, "Find out whose son this young man is." And as soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him, brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine head. Isn't that just crazy? He's still holding his head. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. David said, "I am the son of your servant, Jesse of Bethlehem." You know, last chapter, David was already in Saul's court, right? Playing the harp. And so a lot of people struggle with, okay, why doesn't Saul know David? He should know him. Right? And there's some confusion whether chapter 16 is kind of like an introduction to this David character, and then maybe chapter 17 fits like right here. We don't really know all the answers to that. But I know why Saul is asking, "Who is your father?" Because what did he promise to him? Yeah, he promised, you're going to have my daughter in marriage. So I would, if your daughter was getting married, you'd probably want to know the family, right? Your father will never have to pay taxes again. So it's kind of important that he knows who their father is, right? Who his father is. So he's asking these questions. And even though David has already probably been in Saul's palace, in his kingdom, it's still possible that he just doesn't really know him. Like this guy right here. Did I ever tell you I met Gene Hackman? When I worked at the golf course, I washed his clubs. I carried his bag to his car for him. We hung out. I'm thinking if I run into Gene Hackman again someday, he's not going to go, "Randy, what's up?" And I think that's what happens here with David and with King Saul. Even there's a lot of people in the palace. I want to talk about what motivates. There's two things on your list if you've been following along. Two things that motivate David that I think we can learn from. Number one, his zeal for the honor of God. And number two, confidence in God's power. Zeal for the honor of God and confidence in God's power. Let's focus on that. What would happen if you lived the rest of your day? If you lived the rest of today with no motivation other than to bring glory to God? How would that change your day to day? If your number one goal is, well, everything I do from this moment till the end of today, I'm going to try to bring glory to God. I'm going to try to honor him with my life. And what if you did that tomorrow? Would it change your life? Would it change your day to day? And what if you lived with confidence in God's power? What if you just decided, hey, there's nothing God can't do? Would that change the way you lived? That's the thought. That's the thought I want us to have from this passage. How would it change how I lived and how we live today and the next day if we learned from David?